Hi, my name is Jim Pendree. I've worked as a coach and as an independent business owner for a company called Sunrider, which is a high-quality herbal food manufacturer, for 25 years. If you're like most people, you're frustrated with dealing with all the health information out there, making diet changes and adding health products into your life that haven't produced the results you're looking for. To do that, I'm going to have to talk a little bit about diet change and how your body works, but I don't want to overload you with too much information, but give you enough information to help you understand the key issues. Do I expect you to make all the changes? Well, yes, I do. But it takes a while to figure it out and to make the changes, and Rome wasn't built in a day. But at least once I've educated you, you'll know what to do and how to find your way. You'll hear me say more than once that health is predictable. The idea that we should eat everything in moderation is simply not correct. Everything we eat causes a reaction in the body, either to a negative or to the positive. People talk to me all the time about their health problems. They tell me all the things they've eliminated from their diet and all the things they've implemented into their life to try to have good health or overcome a health challenge, but the health challenge often is still there. So I've been doing this for long enough to know that if you do all the things right and you're not getting results, then there's either something that you've overlooked, or else you have a secret, something you do when no one's looking. So I'll sit down with them and I'll go through all the things that cause most of the problems that like they have. And I'll find it sooner or later. And then, but I'm always surprised about their reaction because they go, oh gosh, I could never give that up. Well, good health is worth putting some effort into. It allows us to have more fun. It allows us to have fun longer than people with health challenges, and it allows us to feel good while we're doing it. So it's like I said before, the body has the ability to regenerate itself of almost anything if you create the right environment. It's in our genetic code to do so, and your body does it every day. We have a brand new covering of skin every 4 weeks. We have new gums every 2 weeks. We have a new inner lining of our digestive tract every 3 to 4 days, and you have a new liver every 5 months. So the body's always rebuilding and renovating itself. But the renovation, the quality of the renovation is only based on the raw materials that you're putting in your mouth and the environment you're creating. So that's why it's so important to give yourself what it needs and not give it the things that it doesn't need. Now, it's all in our approach of how we look at health and the things that we do. Like the Chinese took 5,000 years to research thousands of plants and the body to try to figure out how to nourish, balance, and cleanse it. Like they learned how to specifically nourish individual systems and how to get the most longevity out of the body and the best performance out of the body. You see, the body is the best chemist in the world. Like it knows exactly what to do when you give it the right raw materials. In North America, what happens is that our food is so full of wheat and dairy and corn that most people suffer from food sensitivities. And it's not just that it has those products in it, but it's because most people, or over 50% of the population, have poor digestion. And that makes it difficult to digest foods, creating more food sensitivities. Another thing that people do is they take vitamin supplements, which are mainly isolated chemicals. When you give your body an isolated chemical, it doesn't even know what to do with the thing because it was designed to eat vitamins, but in a whole food form where all the elements were in place. So when you take an isolated chemical, your body has to turn it into something it recognizes. So it has to take enzymes and organic minerals from tissue and bones to try to do that. And you just can't have balance with that. Another issue is that people take herbs or single herbs and herbal formulas that often contain medicinal herbs. Medicinal herbs are like drugs, and of course you can't create balance with medicinal herbs. Then there's the hundreds and hundreds of miracle formulas that are on the market, and I'm not saying that there isn't something good about most of them, but it's little bits and pieces of what should have been in a foundation already. The next issue is the hundreds and hundreds of diet programs on the market. But the truth is that most people eat too many refined foods, too much sugar, and foods that convert to sugar quickly, plus their body is so acidic from eating so much acidic food that your body doesn't have a chance to burn fat and to keep it off properly. So the question I ask to you is that how many foods do you eat every day that balance your blood sugar, that specifically nourish and feed your body systems, that give you antioxidants and that are alkaline? So adding to that question that I just asked, we're going to go farther and talk further into how the body works. Now, we've established that health is predictable. It's easy to feel and look good, and it's easy to feel and look bad. And we're going to talk a little bit more about Sunrider and its uniqueness and its philosophy and the products towards the end. So the question that you may have for me is that, why is it that my grandfather was able to smoke, drink coffee and alcohol and eat lots of sugar and not exercise and live till he was 98 years old? Well, the truth of the matter is that poor health accumulates. Abuse to the body accumulates in time. So the body can take a bit of abuse before it starts to degenerate if you start off with a good set of genes. And to answer this even better, I have a study here that I'm going to talk about. Dr. Pottinger was a doctor back in the 1940s, and he did a study on cats. So he took 900 cats, divided them into 5 groups. 2 groups were fed healthy food, so mice and healthy food for cats. And 3 groups were fed processed food. And I'm not sure what kind of processed food he came up with in 1940, but it obviously wasn't as good as regular cat food. And this is what he found. The 2 groups that were fed healthy food remained healthy, and their offspring remained healthy 5 generations later. The groups that were fed processed food were diseased by old life. The 2nd generation had developed disease in midlife, and the 3rd generation were born with disease, deformities, and could not conceive in most cases. So this tells us a lot. Now, what's the difference between cats and humans? Well, there's not that much as far as our bank account of enzymes. They've proven for cows, for example, that if you feed a cow or a baby cow pasteurized milk, he'll die between 1 month and 6 months. He can't live on just processed food. And for many animals, their bank account for enzymes is smaller than humans. Now, we take a look at processed food in 1940 versus our diet today. Man, we've got radio waves everywhere from our cell phones. We've got microwave food, genetically modified food. We've got chemicals and fertilizers and almost everything. Our dairy products, our poultry, our meat is full of hormones and antibiotics. Like it's ugly out there for our choices. So our health choices are not very good, and it hasn't been very good for a long time, even for families that try to eat healthy. And most people watching this DVD are probably in their 2nd to 3rd generation, since our diet has not been as wholesome as it was back in the early 1900s. So if you think you can treat your body poorly for many, many decades and have good health and not get disease till your old age, you probably don't have that much time. I remember a report I had read years ago. It was something that they were doing in Germany, where they were encouraging young families that were still having children to go on a healthy diet a year before they conceived. So it's not as if this is brand new information that your body degenerates and passes these weaknesses on to our offspring. Now, my favorite part of talking to people about their body is this next section, because it's very graphic and it's maybe a little shocking. And also, I can help people understand how they can reverse the problem, because it's not all negative. It's also, wow, once you know, it gives you a chance to turn the ship around. So it's an absolute given that if your digestion fails, your health will fail. Everything starts with digestion. So here we have anatomy, we'll call it. And in the center of it all is a stomach with a nice high level of digestive enzyme. And your stomach's got lots of digestive enzyme, it produces a nice amount of mucus to protect itself from that acid. And everything's being digested properly, and your colon is relatively clean, and it's full of friendly bacteria, which produces serotonin, which is where 90% of your serotonin comes from, which is a happy hormone or happy chemical. And your B vitamins are being produced, and your liver is clean, and everything works good. So you've got mental clarity, and you've got energy, your stomach is working good, everything is good. And then we add in the 9 stomach busters. So coffee, chocolate, alcohol, smoking, salt, sugar, regular tea, whether it's black or green, preservatives, and artificial sweeteners. And we could add prescription drugs and stress to this. Now, these villains, they really decrease the amount of digestive enzyme your stomach makes. It could be because these are all very acidic, and when you add a lot of acidic products into your stomach, it automatically compensates by producing less digestive enzyme, but the stomach is shocked by these. And after a while, it doesn't take very long, the stomach will be producing a small amount of digestive enzyme. And when that happens, it'll only make a small amount of mucus. And then we add something acidic into our diet. So we add in a cup of coffee, a piece of chocolate, a glass of wine, a tomato, a glass of orange juice. And so what happens is we quickly increase digestive enzyme, but we don't have the protection for it because we've just got this piddly little layer of mucus because our stomach wasn't accustomed to having acid. So that then irritates the walls of the stomach, and the stomach is a muscle, so it contracts when it's irritated. And when it contracts, it squishes the digestive enzyme up into the esophagus, where we have no mucus, there's no protection, and that's where heartburn or acid reflux comes from. So your stomach basically is fastened to your lips. So when it contracts and tightens, something's got to give. So either your head sucks down, or your stomach actually pulls up through the diaphragm that's fastened to your rib cage. That's why people experience pressure on their chest because of the stomach spasming. And that's where hiatus hernia comes from, because you get a little bulge of your stomach up above this diaphragm, and it messes up the valve in there that holds the acid in place. So when you lay down at night, often the acid will run right into your throat. Now, everyone doesn't experience acid reflux, but has major digestive problems. Everybody's a little bit different, but the same thing is happening. The valve could be holding, and the acid may not be coming into your throat. I'll just make a comment about this, is that just the other day I was speaking to a friend, and she's a flight attendant, and she said that there was 10 of them together in a van on their way to the airport, and they were all talking about their health. And she said 8 out of 10 of them all suffer from acid reflux. There's $9.1 billion spent worldwide on acid, on heartburn remedies. It's amazing. $164 million just in Canada alone. So this is a huge issue. Well over 50% of the population suffer from digestive problems. So the next part of this problem is that when you've got a weak digestive enzyme layer in your stomach, you don't have enough acid to digest your food, the protein in the food passes through into your small intestine without being digested. So when you talk to an allergy specialist, they'll tell you that it's the protein in the food in most cases that causes the food allergy. It's the part that isn't broken down. So you look at a tomato and you don't, or I should say a strawberry, and you wouldn't think of a strawberry having protein in it, but of course it does. It's a food, it's a whole food. But if that part of the food goes through not digested, it's a chunk. So to the body, it's like sucking the corner of the rug into the power head of the vacuum cleaner. Like, whoa, you get this chunk of protein, a protein chain that isn't emulsified into liquid. So that is absorbed up into the liver, and it hits the bloodstream. And so how do you think that makes the body feel? It's a hive, it's a rash, it's a headache, it's a boil, it's closing off your air passages. Like, it's a shock to the body. And it's all from poor digestion. So things start to escalate. As the proteins start to sit in the colon, and fats and fiber, all the that makes up the matter in the large intestine. But the fermentation starts, and the breakdown gases from undigested protein are the worst. They produce, or those gases are alcohol and methane gas and formaldehyde, gases that burn. And I kind of joke with this, but I'm not sure how many of you have ever seen anyone burn their farts before, but it's pretty amazing to see. It burns a bright blue flame. And all that fermentation that happens in our colon doesn't just go into the atmosphere. A lot of it is absorbed up into the liver. And the liver is an amazing machine. It takes those gases and other toxicity and it neutralizes it and it turns it into bile. But when these gases hit the liver, it's not all staying in the liver. Some of it also hits the bloodstream. So how do you think that makes the body feel? It's poor mental clarity. It's low energy. It's rashes. It's arthritis. It's aches and pains. It's things like that, things that you all know that you get sometimes and you don't know why. So that's what's happening as the body starts to become more toxic. And another thing that happens in here is that there's a lot of bad bacteria that are there that are only kept in control by friendly bacteria. And because of the use of antibiotics in our food, we wind up losing our friendly bacteria and the bad bacteria grow. And those also make their way into the blood, which can create mental issues and nervous disorders and a lot of problems. So again, it starts with healthy digestion, and as digestion gets worse, everything starts to fall apart. So as the liver becomes more and more toxic, it stops being able to neutralize the bile, all the toxicity, and turn it into bile properly. So then the bile becomes hot. And when the bile is hot, it starts to inflame and irritate the intestines and the gallbladder. Your liver stores bile in the gallbladder, so it gets inflamed and starts having problems. And as we inflame these intestines, we start getting diarrhea, and we start having problems like Crohn's and colitis and spastic bowel and irritable bowel syndrome and all those horrible problems. And the toxicity just keeps getting worse and worse and worse, and it's finding its way into the bloodstream as well. So finally, when the liver is really loaded, it starts letting a lot of toxicity into the blood. And as this escalates, you'll find that the kidneys are starting to do way more work than they were designed to do. So you have uric acid problems, so gout, for example, and your spleen is your largest filter in your body, or I should say your lymph system. And your spleen is at the tail end of your lymph system. So it's basically your last defense. Now, the spleen is in charge of telling your T cells what to do. And your T cells fight foreign cells and bacteria and germs and things like that come into the body, cancer cells. So you want your spleen working properly, telling your T cells what to do properly. But when the spleen is overloaded with chemicals and alcohol, I call it the spleen becomes drunk, and the spleen starts slurring its words to the T cells. And you can actually get the T cells having the wrong message. So instead of attacking foreign cells, they're attacking your body. So this is where autoimmune diseases start showing up. So your MS and rheumatoid arthritis and eczema, problems like that. As your T cells are attacking your body and they're very ferocious, you do not want them on your bad side. And also the bad bacteria are coming through here, the organisms, and along with the other chemicals, and they start to destroy your nervous system. So there's a lot of other degenerative diseases that show up from that. And this is where your genetic code starts being altered, like in the Pottinger cat study. So we have to ask ourselves, is it possible to throw a vitamin pill or an antioxidant or a low-fat muffin or a workout at the gym into this scenario and reverse it? No. It's going to take a lot more than that. And there's no drugs we can throw at this to make the body work. Drugs don't make the body work, and they won't make your pancreas or your spleen work. They regulate body chemicals, but we can't make your spleen work by taking drugs. We have to start reversing the problem. So the only way we can make this work is to get the body working. Only the body can reverse this problem. So it comes back to our foundation and creating that environment where the body can then rebuild itself and correct it, because the body can do that just like that if we create the environment. So we have to go back to our Chinese. The Chinese spent 5,000 years, as I mentioned before, studying 40,000 plants and separating them into food, medicinal, and poisonous herbs, researching the human body and learning how to nourish and cleanse the body to create balance. And that's where Sunrider comes from. The owner of Sunrider, Dr. Chan, he inherited many manuscripts from this golden era, this era of Chinese research, and he created a multi-million-dollar process in order to formulate, concentrate, and extract food herbs by keeping them in their whole food form, so they could go to work in the body like whole foods and nourish and balance it and make it work properly. It's very, very unique what Dr. Chin has done. And I'm going to talk just about some of the basic foods that we use to turn the ship around. But as I mentioned before, we've got to reverse the whole process. So if we just talk about this for a minute, being that there isn't a spleen pill that we can take to make it work, we have to go back and get the liver working. Now, there are things we can do for the liver, dandelion root, there are several cleanses for the liver, but if our intestines are all full of gook and fermenting and producing all these chemicals, then the liver's just going to get toxic again. So we got to get it cleaned out. So we can take colonics and enemas and all kinds of things to clean the liver, and there's, we increase your fiber. But if the stomach is weak, the problems are just going to keep happening with all this undigested protein and the bacteria and thriving and everything. So we got to go back up here and get the stomach working. But you're not going to get your stomach working until you start getting rid of those stomach busters. And even if you got rid of all the stomach busters, what are you going to use to rebuild the stomach? To feed, to nourish it, support it. We've all heard as we're kids that, oh yeah, eat carrots, it's good for your eyes. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't, because they're high in keratin. But these formulas from Sunrider, they really do specifically build the body systems. So when people start off drinking Cali and Fortune Delight, for example, Cali and Fortune Delight are two food beverages that are very nourishing to your body's cleansing system. They don't force your body to cleanse. They're good for babies. They're good for anybody on any medication. They're both good, high in antioxidants, and they really help people. It changes their cravings. So all of a sudden, they don't really like coffee anymore, and tea anymore, and alcohol anymore. And they may still want it, but it makes a huge impact on your cravings. And that's part of the problem, is that when people go on health programs, they struggle with the cravings from the things that they used to do, and they often get pulled back into an unhealthy lifestyle. So the Sunrider foods, they're very effective at helping people transform from an unhealthy lifestyle into a healthy one just because of the food cravings alone. It makes a massive difference. And it gives you something to replace the products that you're already used to using with something that's healthy. So we have all these fabulous tasting beverages. I've traveled the world and I drink tea everywhere, and I've never found, honestly, a tea that feels so good in my stomach and so good in my body as the Cali and the Fortune Delight. So we add these beverages in, it cleanses the liver, gets that working, helps in digestion, but it also makes the big difference as far as the 9 stomach busters. The Sun Care is a really important product because it helps nourish your pancreas and it helps balance out your blood sugars. So, and by doing so, it helps you deal with cravings for sugar, and that's like sugar and honey and anything sweet and anything that converts to sugar. So alcohol, any soda or juice or whatever, all of them are causing problems. And so the Sun Care, again, really helps balance out those blood sugars, and it gives you about 3 to 4 hours of blood sugar every time you have a few drops. Hugely important. It's also antifungal. And then we add in New Plus. New Plus is a pound of organic food, roughly, that's very concentrated. It's a very nutritionally dense food, and it's all foods. There's no chemicals in there whatsoever that you can't pronounce. There's no added sugars. And it really helps with cravings also from fatty foods, salty foods, and sugary foods, and makes you feel nutritionally satisfied. So when you add this in, again, more of the stomach busters go. You start eating less food and more responsibly, so your body is now really starting to feel a lot better. And then we add in the quinine. When I started in Sunrider, I started off with a really bad digestive system. Water would give me heartburn. I was terrible. I had more antacids than anybody. The vehicles were full of them. It was beside my bed, a washing machine, everything was full of antacids. And when I started on the Sunrider foods, I felt so much better. And when I added in the quinine, it really started to build my stomach for the first time. So the quinine is made up of 5 formulas. AD in Canada, which is a digestive formula, and it's called Assimilate in the United States. So it builds the stomach. And LS in Canada and Lifestream in the United States. So that focuses on nourishing your circulatory system. Conco is for respiratory, Alpha 20 is your immune system, and PA in Canada, or Pramagain in the United States, is for nourishing and strengthening your reproductive system, your glandular system, and your nervous system. So when we add these formulas into your body, all in one, or you can get them separately, it starts to build the stomach, increase circulation and the ability of your circulatory system to transfer nutrients as it's supposed to, building your immune system, respiratory, rebuilding the nervous system, and things start to happen. And the diseases that most people have, they start reversing. And it's interesting to note that when I started on Sunrider and when I started helping other people, that at that time I think the digestive formula is more powerful than the nervous system formula, because people get such quick results with digestion, but it takes a lot longer with nervous system problems. But when I met Dr. John Mattson, who wrote a wonderful book called Eating Alive, he just explained this process so clearly that it starts with stomach, works its way through, and finally nervous system and immune problems. So you have to reverse it in the same order. I realized that that's just the order of regeneration. So don't be surprised if those things take longer. And then we have to deal with the colon somehow, because we have to clean that. Slim Caps is an amazing formula that is very good for the lymph system and your liver and your kidneys to help detoxify it. And then while we're on the topic of digestion, Vitadophilus is a product that is, there's roughly 1 billion friendly bacteria in it to replace the friendly bacteria in your colon. So there's lots of different products out there that make products for the colon, prebiotics, probiotics, and they're probably all good. I just know that the Vitadophilus is a very high quality one. There's no strains of bad bacteria with it. And the Evergreen. Evergreen is a very concentrated chlorophyll. And I'll just give you a little background on this. Chlorophyll, whenever you separate chlorophyll from the plant, the chlorophyll is very unstable. It'll go rancid on you very quickly. So companies have to figure out a way of stabilizing it. So they have to preserve it. So what do? You boil it, you refine it down, somehow to take the enzymes out of it, you pasteurize it in a sense like we do dairy, so it will keep. But Dr. Chin doesn't do that in any of his foods, because then you change the state of that plant, and then it becomes inactive and unable to really nourish the body. So Dr. Chin, you remember when he released this product, he had his little chemistry set out there, and he showed us how he turns the chlorophyll into oil-soluble nutrients, which preserves it, and as soon as it hits your digestive enzyme, it turns it into water-soluble, and then it's utilized by the body. So everything he does is amazing. So the evergreen, it's very rich in iron from food, and it helps your red blood cells absorb oxygen better. And that's always hugely important in any kind of health condition or just staying younger longer. So I've used 1/3 of a vial of evergreen for years as well. So that's very important. And the last thing I'll mention, which I forgot to grab, is the Sunrider Cal tabs. They're mainly vegetable based. They're 1,600 milligrams per chewable tablet, and it's very alkaline. And there's a little bit of digestive or a little bit of enzyme in there as well. So when you eat that, if you're ever experiencing a bit of heartburn or just some uneasiness in your digestive system, you just chew one of those capsules up, and it really makes a big difference. So those are kind of the main digestive things. So the last page I'm going to talk about is other issues where you can fine-tune your health program. And I don't want to dump too much information on you, but sometimes these little things can make all the difference. So let's look at the first one, food sensitivities. We talked a little bit about that. The biggest culprits, and this is still news to a lot of people, but wheat and dairy are the biggest culprits, honestly. Wheat, I used to be a farmer, and so I know what happens out there. Wheat is easy to grow. It's easy to grow. It's resistant to a lot of diseases. It's more resistant to frost. It's an easy plant to grow in Canada, so we grow tons and tons of wheat. And because we grow all this wheat and it's in abundance, companies make lots of food out of it. So we wind up eating wheat for breakfast, for snacks, for lunch, for snacks again in the afternoon. We have wheat for dinner. We just wheat. And the starch in wheat and the gluten is very difficult for humans to digest. In fact, about 70% of the population don't digest gluten at all, really. And so it leaves people feeling fatigued. And we get a lot more mucus in our body because of wheat. And it converts to sugar quite quickly. And like I just say to people that you could take flour and water and newspaper and turn it into almost concrete. So how can that be good for our body? And dairy is the other issue. Dairy it comes from an animal that has a totally different digestive system than people do, and then it's pasteurized. And humans are the only race or the only mammal that's never been weaned their entire life. So we're drinking the milk for our whole lives from an animal that's totally different than us and has a totally different digestive system. And then all the milk has been pasteurized. So there's no enzymes in it, which makes it difficult to digest. So it's no wonder there's problems with these two plants. And then just the overconsumption of corn and tomatoes and a lot of other products like that. So food sensitivities, you want to get a hair analysis done or some kind of a food sensitivity test done to find out what foods actually are good for your body and what foods work for your body, because even though it may be good for your friends or whatever, it may not work for you just because of digestion or because of blood type, or there's many factors. Raising blood sugar. Raising blood sugar is probably the biggest reason why people are getting fatter today. They eat so many foods that convert to sugar quickly, and it spikes your blood sugar. It doesn't take very much at all. Half a glass of orange juice would do it. And as soon as your blood sugar is raised, insulin's produced by your pancreas, and insulin lasts 4 to 8 hours. You won't burn fat for the rest of the day. So it's imperative that you keep your blood sugars low. That's why that product that I mentioned of Sunrider is called Sun Care is so important, because it gives you 4 hours of blood sugar just every time you have a few drops. Amazing product. And it's done in a way that is a whole food form. Again, it's done in a specific way to make that happen. It's not like regular stevia that you can buy in the health food store. Skipping meals. That's kind of a no-brainer. It's so hard to get people that are overweight to grasp the idea that they need to eat 5 small meals a day, because they've just got this dieter's mentality. But when you miss meals, 2 things happen. Your body goes, wow, times are tough. I better hang on to every bit of fat I have in case things get really tough. For your body to go into the mode of burning fat, it has to think times are good. Wow, I have all this food, I got all this energy, man, I gotta burn off some of this fat. I don't want to carry it around. So it's hugely important. And Sunrider has a fabulous fat management program, but it starts with there. The second problem with skipping meals is we are what we eat. If you're not giving your body raw materials, how is it supposed to do what it needs to do? And consuming too much acidic food. Our diet should be roughly 80% alkaline, which is amazing when you think about it, and 20% acidic. The reason it's amazing is because the only thing that's alkaline is fruits, vegetables, millet, buckwheat, and almonds, basically. So all your meats, all your grains, everything microwaved, anything cooked, all your stomach busters, any prescription drugs, all that's acid. So most people, when they look at their diet, they realize that their diet is probably 80% acid. So what's the problem with this? Well, the problem is that your body refuses itself to change out of its ratio of acid-alkaline balance within the body. So it robs calcium from your bones to buffer out acidity. And so you wind up depleting yourself of calcium, you had fluid retention because your body retains water to dilute this acidity. So even if you're not fat, you look like you're fat because you're carrying around all this water. It's just unhealthy. And it's hard to get your body into a good fat-burning mode also. The next thing is poor food combining. There was a wonderful book came out years ago called Fit for Life. And basically, like I promised you, I was going to talk about the things that really impact people. Well, one of the things that really impact people is eating sugar or anything that converts to sugar after eating protein. All of a sudden, you're bloated because you've created your own still. When you add any kind of simple carbohydrate, sugar, on top of protein, it triples the amount of time it takes to digest your food. So instead of sitting in there for 4 hours or whatever it is, it's sitting in there for 12 hours. It just takes way longer, so it produces all this chemicals, which you don't want to have happen. So there's also, mixing starches with proteins, but the main one is eating protein and having sugar after it. That causes the biggest problem. That's why when you go to a buffet of some sort and you usually add fruit and meat and everything all together, you walk out of there and you need a wheelbarrow to put your belly in because you're so bloated. The last one is not exercising and stretching. And I know, blah, 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 blah. We've all heard of people, talk about stretching and exercise and how it's important. Well, it is. It's so important for several things, your cardiovascular system, but even just the stretching. As we get older, you're going to tighten up and get stiffer. And when that happens, you're going to start losing your mobility. You're going to start getting hurt. You're going to start losing your core strength if you don't exercise. So you need to do something on a daily basis, and don't be afraid to get some help. Go take a couple of Pilates classes, and they'll teach you how to stretch your body out and how to keep your center, your core, strong. It's really important. So to finish up, I wanted to just mention that, again, which I think I've explained well, that it only takes one or two things right or wrong out of doing a lot of things right to mess up your progress and your health. So you could be doing so many things right, one or two things wrong, and it just seems to stop your progress. And it's not as if your body is different than everybody else's. It's just you haven't put all the pieces together yet. And contact the person who gave you this, and they'll work with you. They'll work with you to help you, and you can watch this more than once, and you can go to my website. My website is healthfoodguy.com. And on there's a section called What the Heck Do I Eat Then? There's a bunch of different recipes. There's an acid-alkaline chart. There's lots of information in the site that'll help you learn about different products, how to get started, and just basic things of what we talked about here. There's a digestive diagram explanation on there. So I think that's it. So thanks a lot for watching, and I look forward to working with you in the future.